If everybody's here, we'll get underway. Thanks very much for coming. Can I say at the outset, there's been certainly an amount of interest, and I wanted to bring people up to date from where we were from last night. As you can appreciate, last night I had the opportunity of viewing the Four Corners program on live animal exports into abattoirs. In addition to that, I'd also been provided from Animals Australia and the RSPCA live footage about animal abuse, and of course had an opportunity yesterday of viewing that. Can I say at the outset that no one accepts the mistreatment of animals, particularly what I saw last night. They were shocking in the extreme. Can I then take you through the immediate reactions that I then took? First of all, what I did was ask the department to look at what type of regulatory action that we can take. What I wanted to ensure is that I had all the available options available to me. In addition to that, what I also then asked the department to do is to look at the suspension or moratorium on what's called the installation boxes. They were referred last night as Box 1. What I wanted to make sure was the Chief Veterinary Science Officer could undertake a review of that work to give me an independent assessment of those boxes, right through from the installation boxes, Box 1 through to the Mark 4 box. In addition to that, I've also asked the department to start an investigation into the live animal export industry right across the supply chain, just to look at what we can do. What I've also then, from this morning on, I've also had an opportunity of looking further. Got a report from the Secretary of my department just about what issues that we can further do. Since that time, I've also then moved to suspend trade to those 11, and forgive me if I don't get the number right. I understand it's 11, but of course the department will work with the RSPCA and the animal rights groups just to identify the number, because what we'll have to do is put it into an export control order. In doing that, what I will then do is make that available to you to confirm those numbers. So we will immediately suspend that. In addition to that, what I've also asked is that we do what's effectively called a supply chain assurance. In other words, an examination right across the supply chain of the animal welfare outcomes. What we want to ensure is they meet the standards and guidelines that have been set. In addition, of course, I will appoint an independent person to undertake that work. I haven't had the opportunity of naming them at this point, but I certainly will get back to you on that. What I want to make sure is that in doing that, I find an independent person who can undertake the work to provide the assessment to me so that we can get an examination of that entire supply chain. Any questions?
How much is the live animal export trade worth to Australia overall? How much is it worth to Indonesia, and how much will it be affected by this suspension of trade to 11 abattoirs?
Overall, the statistics are it's about $1 billion trade. There's about 10,000 jobs right across the north of Australia that participate in the live animal export. And they're general figures. With Indonesia itself, it's about $330 million in export costs that you'd put to it. What, of course, we want to ensure, this is about ensuring that we do have treatment, which you saw last night, which is completely unacceptable to not only the Australian community. I'm sure everyone who saw that would say these images are shocking and unacceptable. What I want to do is get to that outcome. I haven't got an assessment as to the exact cost that this may have in that area, and quite frankly, it's about making sure that we get the right outcomes for these animals.
So can the abattoirs where you ban the trade to, can the animals be redistributed to the abattoirs in Indonesia that are doing the right thing? so that there's no impact?
Well, as you saw on the footage last night, there does appear to be within Indonesia abattoirs that are up to OIE guidelines, that are doing the right thing. These are matters that the department I've asked to bring back to me as part of their initial investigation. What's important here is that in that initial investigation, the department comes back to me. They've provided me with a range of information, and it will continue. What I wanted to look at was the range of regulatory options that are available to me. As to how the industry manages this process, quite frankly, the industry should need to take a leaf out of the book that the practices that I saw last night are completely unacceptable.
How long do you expect the assessment by the independent person to take? I mean, when are you expecting that will actually be provided?
Well, I've only just announced it. What I hope to be able to do is appoint someone. So the process will run something like this. I've asked the department to then look for a person, an eminent person who can undertake the work, who can then give me a timeline. But I do expect it to be relatively quick, but unfortunately it will depend on the availability, the time it takes someone to undertake that work, and of course report back. But in the interim, of course, we will ensure, as I've said, is that the live animal export to those abattoirs which have been identified won't continue. And if there are evidence of any further abattoirs of that standard, then I'm only too happy for that to be provided to me, and I can act on that, because what I've indicated is that this is what I accept as the number, which is 11, but as I said, that may change depending on the department's assessment and the RSPCA's advice. If there are any more, I will add to that. So this is action that I will continue to take.
Senator, do you think the industry itself has a future, given you've got tensions within your own party, independents and Greens saying it's time to close it down? Have you got confidence that there's a live trade future for Australia?
The live animal export is a valuable trade. It is one where we can build capacity with Indonesia, where we can continue to have mutually beneficial outcomes. We already currently export into a range of countries, including into Egypt, where there are abattoirs that are world class that continue to operate. Indonesia has substantially good abattoirs that I'm informed about that I saw on the Four Corners television show last night. So I'm confident that the industry, as a live animal export industry, is one where we provide mutually beneficial outcomes for both Australia and the importing countries. But can I say it's got to be predicated on animal welfare outcomes that are acceptable, meet the OEI guidelines, and of course that's what I'm here to assure.
So you wouldn't consider the demands to phase out the industry entirely within 3 years?
What I've said is I've asked the department to come back to me with a range of options and available regulatory responses. So I'm not going to rule anything in or out at this stage. What I want to do is have a look at what those options are. I already know that I have the option, and which I've exercised, to ensure that 11 we won't be sending cattle into, and I haven't ruling out any further that come to light. I want to continue to say that it is important to us to continue to have good welfare outcomes for the live export of animals.
Senator, you can't say when this investigation is going to finish, you can't say who's going to conduct the investigation, and you were forced in caucus today to toughen up the measures that you'd initially announced after backbenchers were outraged at the programs that they've been inundated from calls from their constituents. Is this investigation a knee-jerk reaction, and don't you owe it to the people who are involved in this trade in Australia to actually give them a bit more clarity about what happens now?
What I indicated last night was that the first initial action was to look at the investigation, first of all, and then put a moratorium on the installation of new Mark 1 boxes, ask the Chief Vet to undertake an examination of those boxes. Together with that, ask the department for an overview and information about the regulatory response. That's the initial response that I had last night. What I then did this morning was look at the regulatory responses that are available to me, which includes suspending trade to those 11. That's action that I've taken today. It is important that we demonstrate to the community that we do take animal welfare outcomes very, very seriously. That's why I have acted today. In terms of the timeline, I expect it to be as soon as possible, but of course that will depend on a range of circumstances. That first of all I have to appoint an independent person. I think it's important to have an independent person to be able to undertake this work so that we can get an assurance that animal welfare outcomes are looked after.
Senator, was the decision made to suspend trade made after caucus?
It was made, well, there's a range of options available to me. I undertook to, obviously I went to caucus to find the views of caucus. I think it's important that I do share this issue with caucus. During caucus, I come to the conclusion that there was an important issue to move to suspend to the, I use the phrase 11, but as I said, it may settle depending on the RSPCA and animal rights groups as to the exact number, so don't hold me to the number. At this stage I'll make those control orders available to you so that we can then ascertain where and which plants that which facilities we're actually talking about. So I hope to have that available soon. The department is now working on that and collating that information.
So the decision was after caucus?
To the extent that I formed my view of what regulatory actions were available to me, and I decided to act.
So you decided to act based on the outrage expressed by fellow MPs?
What I decided to act on, I obviously talked to caucus about these issues, and it's important to actually have a two-way conversation. Having had that two-way conversation, I came to the view that I could act, and I did act.
Just on the notice of motion that was put by 2 members, are you concerned about that it would shut down the entire industry to Indonesia, because that will be voted on during the next sitting week? And as I understand it, if it is passed by caucus members, there is a binding obligation on you to implement that.
Well, these are matters that obviously get to happen, so I don't want to get ahead of where caucus is at. There's a notice of motion. There's certainly a lot of water under the bridge to run before we get to the caucus motion being dealt with. What I've decided to do, though, is act clearly and decisively in this area to ensure that we continue to maintain the animal welfare outcomes that the community really would expect.
Senator, have you spoken to your Indonesian counterparts?
Not at this stage, no. I think it's important to deal with the animal welfare outcomes first.
Senator, when you say from that, you expect what would you expect the reaction to be?
I think anyone who saw the Four Corners report, anyone who saw the video footage provided by the Animals Australia or the RSPCA would be visibly shocked.
Minister,
That's quite frankly, I think they would agree with the actions we've taken.
Minister, Australia exports to over 120 different locations in Indonesia. There's no evidence that those locations are any different from the ones that were in the report last night. Why are you going to allow animals to continue to be exported to those locations?
And what I've indicated, of course, is that I am getting information from the department about what my range of regulatory options are. And I've indicated that I haven't said that this is the only number. What I've said is I will continue to act where there's evidence provided to me about animal abuse. No one accepts what we saw in Four Corners last night, or what Animals Australia or the RSPCA provided to my office.
So is it fair to say you haven't ruled out yet suspending the entire trade to Indonesia?
Well, that's what I don't want to get in the rule in, rule out game. What I've said is that I will continue to act.
But you've said, Minister, that you won't rule in anything and rule out.
That's right.
So it's on the table as a possibility.
If we want to go that far, it's certainly on the table, because it's important to ensure that we do have animal welfare outcomes that are acceptable and meet OAE guidelines.
Senator Ludwig, given your legal experience, at what point are these animals no longer under Australian jurisdiction? Because ultimately the animals we saw last night and the mistreatment they are subject to, unfortunately, but they are not owned by Australians. They've been sold into those markets. So where does our obligation end?
Well, I don't particularly want to get into a legal advice area. Can I say I'm getting advice from the department? That's why I started the investigation last night as soon as I could, to get the range of regulatory options that are available to me and of course the range of responses that I can undertake. I do know do now know that one of those is to suspend trade into the identified facilities, which I've now acted to do.
Do they have an accreditation system there, the abattoirs, that we subject them to before we allow them to receive Australian livestock?
Well, what I've said is I've asked the department to provide some information about a range of issues, and certainly that's one I can add to the list. Thank you very much.